Right now, as you watch this, there is a man somewhere desperately trying to prove himself worthy of love. He is reshaping his personality, abandoning his dreams, and silencing his authentic voice. All for a woman who doesn't actually see him. She sees a fantasy, a projection, a psychological puppet dancing to music only she can hear. Here is the devastating truth that will shatter everything you thought you knew about attraction. The woman staring into your eyes isn't falling in love with you. She is falling in love with the man she believes she can turn you into. And the most terrifying part, you are letting it happen because nobody ever taught you that love built on illusion always ends in betrayal. Carl Jung spent his entire life mapping the darkest corners of human psychology, and what he discovered about relationships would make most men uncomfortable. He found that the majority of romantic connections aren't built on genuine recognition, they're built on unconscious projection. Here is what is really happening when she looks at you with those dreamy eyes. Her unconscious mind is scanning you, like a movie director, casting the lead role in her private romantic drama. You think you are being chosen for who you are, but you are actually being auditioned for who she needs you to become. Jung called this the anima and animus, the unconscious masculine and feminine energies that live inside every person. When these forces are undeveloped and immature, they don't seek partnership, they seek possession. They don't want authentic connection, they want psychological control. But here is where it gets truly insidious. Society has trained you to mistake this projection for genuine desire. You've been conditioned to believe that molding yourself into her fantasy is what real love looks like. The pain you are desperately trying to avoid, the fear of being alone, of being rejected for who you truly are, is the exact pain you must embrace to break free from this psychological prison. Stop. Read that again. Let it sink in. Every time you compromise your authentic self to gain her approval, you are not building love. You are building a house of cards that will inevitably collapse. And when it does, you'll be left confused, angry, and humiliated, wondering what you did wrong. But you didn't do anything wrong. You simply stopped being a convincing actor in someone else's play. Jung observed something that most relationship experts will never tell you. The greatest tragedy of modern masculinity isn't rejection. It is the willingness to betray yourself to avoid rejection. You call it compromise. You call it partnership. You call it love. Jung had a different name for it: self-abandonment. Think about the last time you felt truly attracted to someone. Was it when they were trying desperately to impress you? Was it when they were agreeing with everything you said, morphing their personality to match your preferences? Or was it when they stood firmly in their own truth, unbothered by whether you approved or not? The feminine psyche is drawn to mystery, to challenge, to the man she cannot fully predict or control. The moment you make yourself completely available, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, you don't become more attractive, you become invisible. Here lies the cruel paradox that keeps most men trapped. You fear being alone more than you fear being fake. You'd rather lose yourself than lose her. You'd rather live as someone else's fantasy than face the terrifying possibility that you might be enough exactly as you are. But Jung's research revealed something that will either liberate you or devastate you. The woman who falls in love with your performance will inevitably fall out of love when the performance ends. And it always ends, because maintaining a false identity is psychologically exhausting. Eventually, your authentic self will leak through the cracks, and she'll feel deceived. Not because you lied to her, but because you disappointed the invisible character she cast you to play. This is why relationships that start with intense passion often end with bitter resentment. Neither person was actually relating to the other. They were relating to projections, to fantasies, to psychological shadows dancing in the space between them. Jung didn't offer quick fixes or three-step solutions to this dilemma. Instead, he prescribed something far more challenging: individuation, the lifelong process of becoming psychologically whole within yourself. This isn't about becoming cold or emotionally unavailable. It is about developing such a clear sense of your own identity that you can no longer be manipulated by others' unconscious projections. But let me warn you, individuation is brutal. It requires you to confront the parts of yourself you've spent years hiding. Your insecurities, your weaknesses, your desperate need for validation. It demands that you sit alone in the silence of your own mind until all the voices telling you are nothing without her begin to die. The journey looks something like this. Phase 1. The awakening. You begin to recognize the patterns. You see how you've been shifting to earn approval, how you've been living as a character in other people's stories rather than the author of your own. Phase 2. The withdrawal. You stop performing. You stop seeking validation. You begin the terrifying work of discovering who you actually are beneath all the masks you've worn. Phase 3. The integration. You learn to carry both your light and your shadow. You become comfortable with being disliked, misunderstood, or rejected by people who only love projections. Phase 4. The emergence. You stand in your authentic power, not dominating or controlling, but simply present, grounded, and unshakable in your own truth. Here is what Jung discovered that the dating coaches won't tell you. Women aren't attracted to men who need them. They're attracted to men who choose them from a place of completeness rather than emptiness. This doesn't mean becoming emotionally unavailable or treating women poorly. It means developing such a strong relationship with yourself that you can offer genuine partnership instead of desperate dependence. When you are psychologically whole, several remarkable things happen. You stop being triggered by her moods or opinions. You stop taking her behavior personally. You stop trying to manage her emotions or fix her problems. You become curious rather than reactive, centered rather than chaotic. And paradoxically, this is when many women find you most attractive. Not because you are playing hard to get, but because you are genuinely hard to get. You've become a man with standards, boundaries, and a life that exists independently of her approval. But here is where the journey gets lonely. As you develop psychological independence, you become a mirror that reflects back to others what they haven't yet integrated within themselves. People will accuse you of being cold, distant, or arrogant. They'll say you are too much in your head or emotionally unavailable. But what they really mean is that they can no longer control you with their projections, and that makes them uncomfortable. But for the rare few who have done their own inner work, who have faced their own shadows and integrated their own projections, you become a beacon of possibility. You show them what is possible when someone chooses authenticity over approval. When you've done the work of individuation, something extraordinary happens in your relationships. You stop attracting women who want to change you, and you start attracting women who appreciate you as you are. You'll recognize her immediately because she won't flood you with declarations about your potential. She won't treat you like a fixer, up a project or the missing piece of her puzzle. She'll stand before you as a complete human being, looking for partnership rather than completion. There will be no games, no manipulation, no psychological projection. Just two whole people choosing to walk their individual paths side by side, supporting each other's growth without trying to control it. This kind of love is rare, terrifyingly rare, because it requires both people to have done the inner work that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Let me be brutally honest with you. Most men will never experience this level of authentic connection because they'll quit before they get there. They'll settle for the performance, for the fantasy, for the temporary thrill of being desired for who they pretend to be. Why? Because facing your authentic self, with all your flaws, fears, and imperfections, feels unbearable. It is easier to live as someone else's projection than to risk being rejected for who you truly are. But if you have the courage to keep walking this path, to keep stripping away every false layer you've built to earn approval, you'll eventually find yourself standing at the edge of something terrifyingly beautiful, your authentic self. And when you do, women will no longer be the source of your identity or validation. They'll become something else entirely, partners rather than prizes, allies rather than saviors, fellow travelers rather than destinations. Carl Jung didn't leave us a map to follow. He left us a challenge. A challenge to stop living as characters in other people's stories and start authoring our own lives. He challenged us to stop blaming others for the roles we volunteer to play, to stop seeking wholeness in someone else's eyes, and to stop waiting to be chosen by someone who may never see us clearly. The man who chooses himself, fully, unapologetically, relentlessly, cannot be controlled by fantasy, seduced by performance, or reduced to a character in someone else's script. He becomes the author of his own reality. This isn't about becoming selfish or uncaring. It is about developing such a clear relationship with yourself that you can offer genuine love instead of desperate need, authentic partnership instead of codependent attachment. Right now, you are at a crossroads. You can continue living as a psychological puppet, dancing to the tune of others' unconscious projections, hoping that someday someone will love you enough to make you feel complete. Or you can begin the brutal, liberating work of individuation, the journey towards psychological wholeness that will make you unmanipulable, uncontrollable, and ultimately irresistible to those who are ready for authentic connection. The choice is yours. But remember, every day you spend seeking validation from others is a day you postpone the most important relationship you'll ever have, the one with yourself. Jung's warning echoes across the decades. The man who refuses to confront his own inner world will forever be enslaved by the projections of others. But for those brave enough to face themselves completely, psychological freedom awaits. The question isn't whether you are ready for this journey. The question is whether you are finally tired enough of the alternative to begin. Stop waiting to be chosen. Start choosing yourself.